are welcome here. You are welcome here. Wherever you're going to, wherever you're coming from, you are welcome here. 'Cause it's a house of love, a house of hope and dreams. It's a house of love. You are welcome here, 'cause it's the house of love, a house of hope and dreams. It's the house of love. You are welcome here. In the need of King, where can I stand? Where can angels for you? In the need of King, in the need of King, where can I stand? Where can angels for you? In the need of King, I still God am all. Swing your sails slow, I still God am all. In the need of King, I still God am all. Swing your sails slow, I still God am all. In the need of King.
Good morning. Happy Passover and happy Easter. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you are here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our worship musician this morning is our music director, Tim McKnight, and our audiovisual technician is Stuart Holmes. Welcome to our online service. So let me orient you a little bit to this experience. Whether you have a microphone or not, you are muted and you cannot unmute yourself during our time together. So, and we also can't see you, so you don't need to worry that anyone else can hear what you're saying or doing wherever you are. If you get a notice during the service that pops up that says internet unstable, that means that your internet is unstable. If that happens, you might want to turn off other devices in your home that are using Wi-Fi, and that might help stabilize your connection. If my internet becomes unstable, or God forbid, Stuart's internet becomes unstable, or if Zoom crashes, those are the kinds of things that could disrupt our worship. It hasn't happened so far, thankfully. But if that happens, that's just how it is. So try not to be too stressed if that's happening, and just sit tight for a while and we'll see if we could get back on track. So imagine me at the double doors to our chapel, standing and greeting you this Easter morning, all of us carrying flowers. Since I can't hug you myself, let's all give ourselves a big hug of hello this morning. Hello, Chalice. I missed you. So on your menu button, as you're finding, there's a button that says chat. This is where you get to talk to each other during the service. There's some greetings happening already this morning. I am going to put in the chat a link to our online connection card. If you are new to the congregation and would like to get onto our email list to receive announcements, you can fill out our online connection card in order to get onto our email list. So let me put that in there. There it is. Also, if you are a regular attendee at Chalice and you have a question that you would normally submit on a connection card, or if you have any change in contact information you want to let us know about, you can also use that online connection card to request that information or provide that information. I'm also going to give you my email address. There we go. If you would like to submit a prayer request to me, or if you have any confidential information that you'd like me to know, those are the kinds of things you can email to me, and I'll read them privately after the service. So you can open up the chat box if you haven't. And so I need to remind people every Sunday, when you post in the chat, make sure you use the little blue menu to drop down and make sure you select all panelists and attendees. If you only send your message to the panelists, then only Stuart and I will see them, and we're like super busy for the next hour, so we're probably not going to see them at all. So send your message to all panelists and attendees, and then everyone can see what you're posting. So let's go ahead and see who's here. We'll say hello to each other in the chat box. Use your names. If it's your first time with us and you'd like to let us know, we'd be delighted, and maybe where you are in the county. And we have people actually from all over the country who are with us on Sunday mornings these days. So you can let us know that as well. And we'll take a minute for these greetings while we enjoy some music. We begin our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. This morning, we invited the Kuhn Delaney family to light the chalice for us. We light our chalice this morning, grateful for all the different and new ways we have of being together. May our chalice flame burn brightly, that all who are seeking may find us. Today is, for many of us, an especially hard Sunday. It is our tradition at Chalice to mark this day with flower communion. We have an Easter egg hunt between services. It is a joyful and usually a very sunny Sunday, and all that may feel very far away this morning. I know that Passover has been hard as well. The traditional gatherings for Seder have taken new forms with fewer people gathered around the table. It is okay to be tired of change. It is okay to be tired of everything different. Okay to feel weary of resiliency and wholeness and learning and growth. And okay to yearn simply for rest. It's okay to be grouchy and unsatisfied, and all the ordinary human ways of being that we are. Let this morning be a reminder that you are loved, Let our time together soothe what is restless in you, and may you be comforted in knowing that whatever you are feeling today and other days, you are not alone. You are never alone. Let us worship together. Please join in singing. If you have a sorrow you would like to share with the community this morning, you're invited now to share it in the chat box. We won't share these out loud, but please feel free to respond to each other in the chat. This is our time for sorrows. We'll share our joys a bit later on. We'll listen to some piano music, and if you have a candle in your own home that you would like to light, this is a good time. May our sorrows be lessened. May our burdens be lightened. In sorrow and challenge, may we know ourselves always held and never alone. May we act to extend our warmth to all who are hurting in the wider world. And now, a story. Our storyteller today is Patty Carlisle.
Our story today is Peetook, an Easter story, written by Carol Houselander and illustrated by Tommy DePaula. It was a lovely warm day. The sky was bright blue with clouds, white and thick. And Peetook had reason to be happy. A fine rooster with snowy white plumage, today he had become the father of 12 chicks. He thought that there were no chicks like them, none so fluffy, none so bright-eyed. During the past week, Peetook had sometimes felt a little impatient with his wife. It seemed that Martha had some secret that he did not share. It made her look almost smug, and it annoyed Peetook to be outside of it. Martha just sat on the eggs with a smile on her face, not talking, only making little happy sounds in her throat now and then. But now Peetook understood. It was he who was smiling and bursting with joy. Peetook was sitting on a gate post when a group of hens ran up to him. "Come," they clucked, "some stranger has been walking through the vineyard." Peetook, who was as inquisitive as any hen, got up at once and hurried off with the others. And sure enough, there on the dewy grass beneath the vines were the impressions of a child's feet. They were set in a straight line toward Jerusalem. But Peetook knew that between the vines and the road to Jerusalem were Martha and the children. He began to fly in short, violent bursts to return to his family, all the way saying to himself, "I am sure that they were boys' footsteps, and he might tread on one of those chicks." When he got to Martha, he knew that he need not have been afraid. It is true, there was a boy there, but this boy was kneeling by her with a look of wonder on his face, spellbound by the sight of Martha gathering the chicks under her wing. His hands, thin and golden colored, were spread out like protecting wings over Martha. His eyes were shining. So rapt was he that Peetook thought it must be the first time that he had ever seen a hen gathering her chicks. Peetook strutted all around. He noticed every detail of the day, just as people notice every detail in a picture which they may not see again. He noticed how strong-looking the slim hands were, and that the child's garment was woven without a seam. The years had gone by. Peetook now was quite old. He had just passed through an uneasy night. Everything had been steeped in moonlight, but all had looked strange and sad. He could see the distant hill of Calvary, where the 3 tall trunks always stood. Only when someone was about to die did the trunks become crosses, with beams that fastened across them. Sitting atop the dovecot, Peetook could just see the trunks, dark bars on the shining sky. It seemed as if morning would never come. Martha was sleeping on her eggs. The moonlight made long black shadows on the grass. And then a break in the sky and morning came. Peetook crowed out long and loud, for he felt excited and lifted up. He could not tell why. All the day long he kept returning to the dovecot and looking at the trunks. At about midday, Peetook saw that there was a little smudge at the top of the hill, which must be people. And then the crossbeams went up. When he saw it, he slowly opened his wings, for to him the cross looked like the opening of great wings. Of course, he did not know who was being lifted up there. He did not know that it was the lovely little boy, or that the little boy had remembered Martha and her chicks years after, and had said to his hard-hearted men, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered you under my wings, as a hen gathers her chicks, and you would not." It was 3 days later, a morning before Petuk's dark mood had changed. He had a feeling of certainty that Martha's chicks would come out of the eggs today. It would be dawn in a few minutes, and the chicks would surely come. There was a soft step on the grass. It was the farmer's wife. She loved the fowls, and now she knelt down by Martha, who made a soft gurgle of greeting. The woman put her hand under the hen's breast and drew out an egg, and it was lovely, warm and beautiful. The woman put the egg back, and then she leaned down, listening. Petuk was listening too. So were the blades of grass and the drops of dew on them, and so were the leaves on the trees and the stars that lingered in the sky. The world was listening. It was so quiet that Petuk heard the chicks and the eggs tapping softly with their beaks to get out, knocking softly to come out of the dark and into the light. And then suddenly one of them came out as the sky broke into a splendor of light. Petuk threw his head back and crowed, the white feathers in his plumage dazzling in the light. And then he crowed again. It was Easter morning. The end.
Our reading comes from Unitarian Universalist Sue Andrews.
Our story today is Petuk.
As a boy, Jesus learned to be a carpenter. But after he grew up, he became a teacher and traveled all over Israel talking to people. Jesus talked about being a loving person, being kind, and helping those who need our help. He said we could see God's love in our loving relationships with other people. Jesus got very angry at people who put money first and people second. Crowds of people came to hear Jesus speak. A small group of people traveled with him. These were his disciples. In the spring at this time of year, Jews celebrate Passover, which is a very important Jewish special day. Jesus and his disciples traveled to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. They came into the city on what we now call Palm Sunday, which is the Sunday before Easter. There were huge crowds and people spread palm branches on the road. Jesus rode on a little donkey over the palm branches. Jesus knew he was upsetting people in power. He was telling people that putting money first was wrong, that God loved all of God's children, that it was more important to be a loving person than it was to be powerful. And Jesus knew that he was going to get in big trouble with the authorities. It made the authorities very nervous that Jesus was so popular with the people. Sure enough, the priests and bankers went to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate and demanded that Jesus be arrested. And then after his arrest, these powerful people insisted that Jesus be put to death. In those days, criminals were killed by being nailed up on a cross, crucified. Jesus was put on a cross up on a hill between two robbers. After Jesus died, a good man named Joseph came to the authorities and asked to take away Jesus' body and put him in a tomb carved into a rocky hillside that Joseph had been saving for himself. This was on a Friday. Now the Jewish holy day begins Friday at sundown, so Joseph and the women who were very close to Jesus had to hurry and wrap his body in linen and put it in the tomb, because for Jews, Saturday, the Shabbat, is a holy day of rest, and no work at all may be done. The powerful people insisted that a stone be put in front of the tomb and that there be guards. On Saturday, the men and women who had been Jesus' disciples and close friends observed their Shabbat, their day of rest. But first thing Sunday morning, the women who had been closest to Jesus went to his tomb with spices and perfumes to put on Jesus' body. This is how the story goes in the Gospel of Luke, in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the 3rd day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen laying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many thoughts and ideas about what happened, but you should know that what Jesus said and what he did and the love he shared are still very much alive 2,000 years later. Let us join in singing. When I was growing up, Easter was the one time of year that my family went to church. We went to my grandma's Methodist church, and then we went to her house for Easter lunch. Easter never made a lot of sense to me as a kid. I didn't see the connection between bunnies and eggs and the death and resurrection of Jesus, but I enjoyed our family traditions and didn't worry about the details too much. When I found Unitarian Universalism back in 2004, Easter became one of the holidays I enjoyed the most. I liked going to church on Easter Sunday as it followed the tradition of my childhood, but now I wasn't being asked to pretend that bunnies and eggs had anything to do with Jesus. nor was I asked to pretend that the resurrection of Jesus had much meaning to me. It was the tradition at my home congregation to observe flower communion on Easter Sunday. So when I became your minister, I followed the tradition of my home congregation by offering flower communion at Chalice on Easter, which had already been Chalice's practice since 2006. And it's very common for Unitarian Universalists to observe flower communion on Easter. But it is worth knowing that flower communion was not originally an Easter celebration. It was celebrated at the start of the summer. And in some of our UU congregations, Easter has been a time for deep reflection and engagement with the Christian story of Jesus' death and resurrection. I have wondered the past few years if we've been missing out by mostly ignoring the resurrection story in favor of flower communion. So the unusual circumstances of this year, which prohibited our exchanging flowers with each other, felt like an invitation to me and to us to consider the Easter story and what meaning it might have for us, especially right now. What my family's annual Easter church visit failed to teach me is that Easter and the story of hope and transformation comes at the end of Lent and is the conclusion of Holy Week, and that understanding these is important to understanding Easter. Lent in the Christian tradition is a 6-week season of self-denial to prepare for Easter. It echoes Jesus' 40 days in the desert. Jokes about Lent have abounded this year, as all of us have had to give up so much, staying at home for quarantine. One social media meme noted that this Lent will go down as the lentiest Lent that has ever lented. You and I have observed Lent this year, whether we meant to or not. Holy Week began last Sunday, Palm Sunday, commemorating Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem. There are various traditions associated with the first part of the week, and then Thursday is known as Maundy Thursday, commemorating the Last Supper. Good Friday commemorates the crucifixion and death of Jesus. And because the Jewish Shabbat begins Friday at sundown, Jesus and his followers were Jewish, remember? Because of the need to prepare for Shabbat, Jesus was hurriedly placed in a tomb with the intention from his friends to finish embalming and proper burial ceremonies on Sunday, after Shabbat had ended. This is why women came to Jesus' tomb on Sunday morning and were surprised and dismayed to find it empty. It is that part of the story that I'm inviting us to reflect on this morning. It is easy for us to forget what a radical Jesus was, what he was walking around talking about, that we should love our enemies, that the meek, the poor, and the hungry will be rewarded in heaven, that material wealth gets in the way of knowing God. These teachings are as radical today as they were then. Right now, there are still homeless people on the streets of San Diego being moved along, forced to move, even in rain, because there's no place that they are supposed to be. When you hear of homeless people being housed at the convention center, those were people already in shelters. They're moved to the convention center to help observe social distancing. Well, there's not space for that in existing shelters. Homeless people with symptoms and with risk factors are being placed in hotels to help them self-isolate. Only after all shelters have moved their clients to the convention center, then attention will be turned to admitting people who have been living outdoors. We do not treat the poor and the hungry as though they are special in the eyes of God. We do not even talk about loving our enemies. We do not regard wealth as an impediment to knowledge, freedom, and happiness. So imagine that you had been following the teachings of such a radical, such a guide, when he was put to death as punishment for his radical teachings. Imagine living in a world where it seemed that corruption was rewarded, a world where meanness, vulgarity, and ignorance were revered, a world where the marginalized and oppressed were downtrodden and demonized. Imagine a world where the greatest leaders ignored their responsibilities to protect and care for their people. It is not hard to imagine this world. Here we are. Now imagine that someone you love is taken from you too soon and for all the wrong reasons. And when you come to tend their body after their passing, when you come to grieve and honor your beloved, that instead of finding them where they are supposed to be, instead you find an empty tomb. Easter morning so long ago was no time for rejoicing. It was, in fact, a time of confusion and great uncertainty. What had happened? What was happening? Who were the men at the tomb? Could their words be true? Remember, when the women came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Have you read supposed information about the coronavirus and not been sure what to believe? Even now, in this incredible age of science and information, it is hard to know what to believe and what to ignore. Information is abundant, but so is misinformation. We too are living in a time of confusion and great uncertainty. And so now, perhaps we can understand in a way we might never have before, why for Christians there is so much joy and reverence for the Easter story and the belief in Jesus' resurrection. Wouldn't we all welcome some good news today? Instead of confusion, clarity. Instead of uncertainty, rejoicing. And in the jubilance of that story, wouldn't we too find satisfaction in knowing that tyrants had been overcome, that injustice had been righted, that callous leaders were no longer triumphant, but instead had been vanquished by one who taught that the meek are blessed and will inherit the earth? I think we would. We shared our sorrows earlier in the service, and now it's time for our joys. If you have a joy you would like to share with the community this morning, now is the time to share it in the chat box. We won't share these out loud, but feel free to respond to each other in the chat. This is the time for joys. We'll listen to some piano music, and if you have a candle in your own home that you would like to light, this is a good time. May our joys be multiplied. May we act to extend our warmth to all who are rejoicing in our wider world. Our offering words are from Unitarian Universalist layperson Kristen Collins. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. We invite you to text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. And once you've entered that information, if you've done that previously, you don't need to enter it again. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration.
Within us waken
Beautiful. Easter coincides with spring, and we tend to use rebirth to describe their shared meaning. But rebirth isn't really the right word, I would suggest. Transformation is, in my opinion. When a tree drops its leaves in the fall and then grows new ones in the spring, it is not the same leaves that grow again. They are new leaves. The Jesus who is resurrected in the Christian stories is not who he was before, and he does not return to his previous earthly life to continue traveling and teaching. He is transformed. He's changed. He's no longer only human. He is now also divine. We do not go through the losses of life and emerge untouched. We are changing even now in ways we can't fully see or understand. We will only know when this is all over and we can look back with some clarity and self-awareness. What Easter promises is that our suffering, our loss, whatever you want to call this time, that it will come to an end, and that there will be joyfulness and laughter and lightness again. There are now, in fact, leaders we can trust, news we can believe, people who are helping one another. Look at the world around us. Millions of people are staying home, hoping to slow the spread of the virus. Artists give free concerts online. Museums offer online tours. Zoos put animals on cameras. We are all working together to pass the time the best that we can. Humanity is so much more loving and cooperative than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. Today might not be the day we had hoped for, but that doesn't make today a bad day. We still have loved ones to connect with and ways to be connected. We still have each other. And we still have tomorrow and more tomorrows to be hopeful for. Happy Easter.
I'm
Our closing words come from Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. We live inside paradox. Humans generally don't like to admit it. We much prefer tidy, stable, comprehensible, logical ways of getting through the day. But paradox is woven into the fabric of this particular universe we inhabit. Light is both a particle and a wave. Imaginary numbers describe the math of physical phenomena. Love and grief are inextricably linked, as are rage and sorrow, suffering and compassion, life and death. Time itself is both linear and cyclical. Each person's life traces a single arc, yet patterns emerge and re-emerge. Fear always seems to return. Goodness knows terror finds its way back into the news. We always seem in need of help to roll back big stones that block our way. Yet we also come back to the Alleluia, even if its absence has gone on far longer than the 40 days of Lent. We raise each other's spirits when our sacred places seem empty. We anoint each other. We engage in a demanding faith that asks us to love the world more, love the next world into being today. We are joyful, though we have considered all the facts. We practice resurrection. It is Easter again, my friends, and you are surrounded by a multitude who wish you well. Love and blessings to each of you. I hope you will join us after the service at Coffee Hour. I will put the link to Coffee Hour in the chat box, and you are invited to close our time together by singing the well.